In this video, we're talking about podcasting, the pros, the cons, and why it can be really great for your business. Hey guys, I'm Brandon, and I want to welcome you back to Marketing with Brandon. Or if it's your first time here, welcome. Now, if you're new to the channel, every week I teach you about marketing. I give you education, insights, and strategies that you can use to grow your business tremendously. So, if you're interested in that type of content, hit the subscribe button, then hit the notification bell so you don't miss out. Now, today we're talking about podcasting. And if you've watched some of my previous videos, then you'll notice the set today is different because I wanted to show you my podcasting setup. Podcasting is a really great way to create content that will resonate in the minds of your potential customers and help to steer them toward purchases with you and your business. And so I wanted to talk about the pros, the cons, and give you my recommendations if you want to start your own podcast. Now, in case you're not familiar, a podcast is an on-demand internet radio show, or really it's just an audio file that is published on a sequential feed that people can access on demand. Now, podcasts can have audio only, or they can be video as well. However, about 90% of people that consume podcasts consume them just audio only. So the great thing about podcasting is that you don't have to be super polished or presentable. You don't have to worry about turning on a camera and having good lighting or fixing your makeup. And, a lot of people, especially those who are new to content, aren't comfortable speaking on camera, but podcasting can be like talking to your friend or talking to yourself, if that's okay. So it's really good, easy to get started, and that's why I think it's great for your business. So again, we're going to talk about some pros, some cons, and I'm going to give you my recommendations on how to get started yourself. So some of the pros of podcasting, the first is that it's really easy to get started. It doesn't cost a lot either. Really, all you need are a microphone, a computer to record with, an internet connection to upload to your host, and a willing listener. Now, podcasts can take many formats. You can record an interview style podcast where you have a weekly guest, or you can record solo episodes where you are just teaching on a specific topic per episode. Whichever route you want to take, again, it's really easy to set up and the software is really simple. So that's the pro, or that's one pro of podcasting. Now, another benefit of podcasting is that it helps to position you as an authority or an expert in your field. Think about it. Let's say you're a plumber, and one of the hardest problems for plumbers can be finding customers. What separates you from any other plumber? If I go in the phone book or on Google, then I'm just going to see a bunch of plumbers. Maybe I'll only get to the one who has the name that starts with A or B, right? Because they're all plumbers, they all fix pipes, whatever. Instead of competing with everyone in the phone book or on Google, if you are able to create a podcast about plumbing where you talk about, the origins of plumbing, or you talk about common problems, how to prevent, these really expensive repairs. You can talk about drain maintenance and whether or not Drano is good for your pipes, whether or not it's good to use a certain type of pipes under your sink, right? When you talk about these things, people perceive you as an expert on the subject. And so then when they're thinking, hey, I need a plumber, they'll say, oh man, I've been listening to Rick the plumber for years. He's given me all sorts of tips. I'm sure he can fix this problem. Now, the reality is what you know is probably not very much more special than anything any other plumber knows. You all went to plumbing school, but because you put your information out there, because you shared from your wealth of knowledge, people perceive you as an expert and you are on the top of their minds. So that's the first, or that's another reason why podcasting can be great. And that's really applies for content in general. Now, another benefit of podcasting, aside from positioning you as an authority or an expert, specifically if you have an interview style show, then it gives you access to experts in your field. So, I run a podcast called Music Business Dreams, and every single week I speak to a different professional in the music industry. I speak to artists or singers. I speak to music executives like managers or publicists, and I speak to all sorts of experts who are on the tech side of things, who are creating different softwares. Now, I speak to these individuals for nearly an hour every single week, and I ask them all the questions I can about their profession, about what success looks like, and about how they navigated toward a successful career in the music industry. Now, aside from helping to provide my audience that value from getting that knowledge, I'm learning as well. The more people I talk to, the more of an expert I become. And I'm probably not going to be able to ever talk to these people again, right? Most of these people charge hundreds, even thousands of dollars just for an hour of their time, but they're giving it to me for free because I have access to an audience that they would like to reach. So, to put yourself in a room of CEOs and all sorts of people that you wouldn't normally get the chance to talk to, you create your own media outlet in the form of a podcast. So, that's another great benefit of podcasting. The last and probably the most important benefit of podcasting is that it has really high engagement. Now, we'll talk about cons in a moment. One of the cons is that podcasting can be slow to grow. It's hard to promote a podcast. It's not as easy as, say, a YouTube video where there's SEO and things like that. But with podcasting, people are used to listening to podcasts for a long period of time. The average podcast is between 40 minutes and an hour long. So when someone is listening to a podcast episode that you produced, they're listening because they want the answer to a very specific question. And so if you have repeat listeners, that means they really, really trust you. It's interesting. My podcast, we've been podcasting for over a year. We've got about 50, actually just over 60 episodes right now. We've been downloaded 13,000 times. Now, just for comparison's sake, I got 13,000 views on my YouTube channel last month. So the numbers are small in comparison. However, 9 times out of 10, when someone purchases one of my products, it's because they listened to my podcast. Perhaps they found my podcast because of my YouTube channel, and then they heard me speaking about certain topics and said, oh, I can trust him. I'll purchase one of his coaching programs. So the rate of engagement is really high. People who listen to you for a longer amount of time are more likely to purchase your products or services. So that's something to think about. Now, again, I told you we're going to get into the cons. Let's go ahead and get into them. The first con about podcasting is that, again, it's hard to grow. Engagement is really good, but podcasting exists in a sort of a closed ecosystem called an RSS feed. In order to subscribe to an RSS feed, you've got to use a podcast platform like Apple, iTunes, or Spotify, or Google Play. Because you don't know which platforms people use, it can be difficult to draw attention to any one of them, because you may alienate an audience. Now, the majority of podcasts that are listened to on Apple, but that majority is shrinking. There are so many other platforms out there. There's Deezer and Spotify and iHeartRadio and Google Play and Stitcher and Buzzsprout. There are so many podcast platforms, and it's hard to keep up. And again, with podcasting, they don't lend themselves very well to organic growth, right? Without paying for advertising for your podcast, you're likely not going to grow very quickly. Word of mouth doesn't spread as well on podcasts. So that's the first negative to podcasting. Now, the second negative or con about podcasting is that if you are hosting an interview style show, then it's going to take a lot of outreach. You're going to be constantly emailing people to try to book them as guests on your show. Again, I host my podcast weekly, and if I'm not careful, I can run out of guests very quickly because I spent so much time interviewing and editing the show. I forgot to say, oh, I need to email more people. I remember once after the first 2 months of my podcast, I had recorded about 6 episodes in advance. But then I started emailing people like, oh man, I need more guests. And what was happening was the new people that I emailed and went and reached out to for interviews, they scheduled interviews, but they scheduled them weeks out. So I was left without a guest for almost a month and had to improvise on, well, what topics can I speak to by myself because I don't want to miss a week of my show. So the outreach is crucial and can be a downside to producing a podcast, especially if it's an interview style. Now, I talked about how easy it was to get started with podcasting and how inexpensive it can be. But one of the cons to podcasting is if you want to upgrade your equipment, if you want to get a more professional sound, it can get pretty expensive pretty quickly. Just for example, a setup like mine with this microphone, those speakers, the audio interface can cost you up to about $1,000. And if you need a more powerful computer for editing, that can cost you another $1,000. The good thing about audio is that it's not very CPU intensive, but the more you learn about audio, the more you become aware of different programs and different plugins and tools that you can use to improve your sound, the more you'll need a better computer to be able to handle those intense processing tasks. So those are the cons, the downsides to a podcast. They're really not very many, and I think the benefits far outweigh the negatives. So if you're thinking about getting started with a podcast, there are a few things you need to know. First, you need the equipment. Now, you can get started with podcasting with something as simple as a USB microphone, which I recommend the Blue Yeti. You can get a good USB microphone for between $99 and about $200. But with a USB microphone, there's no other equipment required. You don't need any fancy speakers. You don't need a fancy audio interface. It's just you, the microphone, and you can set up a couple of pillows to help get your sound right and not echoing and bouncing off the walls so much. Once you've got your microphone, and of course, you need a laptop to record on. You can use a Windows or a Mac, right? They're both very accessible and they both have basic audio programs. Now, you will need software. Macs come with GarageBand for free. If you're on a PC, you can use a software called Audacity. That's free to download as well. Now, again, these are really basic and bare bones softwares. So if you're going to want to upgrade your audio, and I recommend using Adobe Audition, which you can download for PC as well as for Mac. Now, once you've got your PC and you've recorded everything, of course, you're going to need a podcast host. You can't upload podcasts directly to Apple or Spotify. There's a go-between, an intermediary, as you would say. And what I recommend and what I use is Simplecast. Simplecast has really simple plans. They have really great analytics to tell you who's been listening to your show and for how long and where they're located. But you can get started on Simplecast for as little as $15 a month, and you can upload your show and they can publish to all of the major podcast platforms. So those are the tools you'll need to get started. And in the description of this video, I'll leave links to my personal equipment recommendations. I'm really excited to see you grow your business using podcasting. Do you have a podcast of your own? I'd love to hear about it in the comments of this video. And if you haven't started one yet, I'd like to know why. So yeah, I want to hear about it in the comments below. Now, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed to the channel already, please do that and share this video with a friend. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our other videos. Until the next time, be safe and be well. Peace.